in Entertainment Weekly's 2013 preview issue, which we've discussed a lot in the last few weeks, there was an interview with Francis Lawrence. I think this snippet of the interview might be an online-only thing. We're linking to it in the promo for tonight. But anyway, so he did this interview with Entertainment Weekly, and he revealed that Bonnie, Twill, and Darius have been cut from the film. I will go ahead and read the quote from the article. Lawrence says he and Collins were always in agreement about what from the book needed to be distilled, so he was coy about cuts. When asked, for instance, whether we should expect to see Bonnie and Twill, the District 8 runaways Katniss stumbles upon in the woods, who first alert her to both the rebellion she inadvertently sparked and the existence of District 13, he at first demurred, or is it demurred? How do you pronounce that in English? Demurred?
I always wonder about that.
It's not a word that one ever says out loud.
Yeah, I wonder if it's interchangeable, actually. But then again, I'm trying to put a French spin on it. Anyway, so this is what he said. You've got to wait and see, he urged. But when it was pointed out that there is, in fact, no Bonnie and Twill listed on the movie's IMDb page, he gave it up. All right, he said with a laugh. On how the movie will now introduce District 13, Lawrence would only say that it was fun figuring out new ways around things and new ways of doing things. With Bonnie and Twill gone, so too is the scene of Katniss scaling a tree and then leaping over District 12's electrified fence. And Darius, District 12's youngest peacekeeper who intervenes during Gale's whipping and then sentenced to the life of an AVOX, is another who did not make the leap from page to screen. Courtney, let's start with you.
Okay.
How do you feel knowing that Bonnie, Twill, and Darius have been scrapped from the movie?
Bonnie and Twill, I've always suspected they were gonna go, so I was totally not surprised. As far as Darius goes, I really liked that character, and I was really bummed. Because of, you see how much the Capitol or President Snow is messing with Katniss's head when he's being, he's her AVOX, but because Gary Ross couldn't work that into the storyline, obviously they're not going to continue that, even, start that storyline again. So I can see for that reason why they cut it. But I'm still sad that the AVOX storyline was cut to begin with, so a little bitter about that, but that's the way it goes.
That's the way the
cookie crumbles.
I was trying to come up with something witty and Hunger Games related, but I failed. That's the way the lamb stew crumbles. I don't know. Ellie, what about you? Are you okay with these cuts?
I mean, I'm someone that just wants to see the book on screen, so I'm never really okay with cuts. But these ones, at least, I don't think are completely horrible in terms of the overarching theme of the story, at least. The Darius part I wasn't surprised by because the entire AVOX storyline had been cut from the first one.
Yeah.
And the main idea of his part, really, I think, is to have him be an AVOX and show how much Snow is controlling everything about Katniss's life at that point. So it makes sense that was cut. Bonnie and Twill, I was actually a little surprised about that being cut because I thought it was a good way to introduce District 13. But I'm very curious as to how they're going to do it now.
I am too. And I think one thing we have to ask ourselves about these cuts is how do these characters function in the book? None of them really have a crucial function. Bonnie and Twill obviously introduced District 13 and the rebellion, But there are so many different ways that you can do that will probably look a lot more interesting on film. And as for Darius, I'm like Courtney. I really like Darius. I think he's a neat character, but what is his function? What purpose does he serve? And Ellie, I think you kind of just nailed it, and they've eliminated the entire Avox storyline or subplot. So, and he also, I think, Darius flirting with Katniss helps Gale to discover his feelings for her. But the first movie already set it up. I think it was somewhat obvious when Gale was watching Katniss and Peeta that he was jealous. So we don't need Darius for that anymore. Crystal, are you there?
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. I was scared. I was worried because, I'm on Skype and sometimes my connection drops. And at first I was terrified that I had just been dropped off, but I'm still here. So, Crystal, do you think that, or do you agree with the decision to cut Twill, Bonnie, and Darius from the movie?
For Bonnie and Twill, I don't think that they served as big a purpose that would make them essential to the story. But on the flip side, I kind of thought that they were small enough where it would be like minimal effort to put a scene with them in, So I'm a little on the fence there. With Darius, I feel like he could easily be replaced by a different character that already exists. So, I guess I kind of agree with cutting Darius, but I'm a little mixed about Bonnie and Twill because I just don't feel like they were only in the books for I don't know. I guess it was just one chapter, but it was like a day for Katniss. But they could have cut it to a few minutes, So yeah. I'm fine with the decision, but if I were making a movie, I probably would have included them just because I think it's very compelling to encounter these characters who are from a different district. And I don't know, they just have a really interesting story, and it is a neat way to introduce the rebellion in District 13 and everything, but
it's
maybe
also, my favorite part about that scene is that it's Katniss's first, knowledge of how big she is, because she did the victory tour and she got a glimpse, but I feel like when you're up on stage it's different.
Yeah.
Then when you're actually talking to people, they're holding up a cookie that has her pin imprinted in it, and she's just like, what is going on?
I just feel like if they're not going to include the lamb stew, then we shouldn't expect the Mockingjay cookie.
We could still work that in, though. Possibly.
Well, I would really like that because, the lamb stew was in 3 books, so I think it should have been in the first movie.
I agree. I am very partial to the lamb stew.
I'm also partial to Mr. Millark's cookies. That's one little tiny thing that I was sad to see go. I get why they couldn't include it, but I like that scene in the book. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah?
I just said we can start Team Lamb Stew.
I was just going to say that, for a movie, it is a lot harder to introduce new characters suddenly and then just have those characters vanish. It's, I think, kind of translates awkwardly into a film, so maybe that was sort of where their heads were. People who haven't read the books would see these characters and then never see them again and wonder what happened to them. I don't know. Adam, we want your perspective on this very important issue.
Would it be highly inappropriate for me to ask if, in cutting Darius, maybe they didn't cut the part of his tongue that was cut from his mouth? That is
so offensive.
I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. That was very inappropriate. No, in all seriousness, I think it's no secret that I really wanted Bonnie and Twill to be in this story, in this film. I'm over it. I guess I've just kind of known this is going to happen for a long time. I know, Savanna, it never bothered you that much. Maybe you're starting to rub off on me a little bit, and I just feel like I'm getting way too sensitive about something that's just honestly not that important. I would have liked it, but I think the movie will go on just fine without it. And if you think of it this way, one way I think to look at cuts that are made, you can say, I can't believe they cut this, I can't believe they cut that. But what you might want to ask yourself is, if they didn't cut Bonnie and Twill, what would they have cut instead? Because they obviously can't make the movie so long. So maybe the alternative is a far, far worse thing. And, I was one of those people who was really up in arms about the whole Madge not being in the first film. I thought, this is crazy. She gives her the Mockingjay pin. But, I kind of liked the way they did that. And even though I still would have had a slight preference for having Madge, I could see how for someone who has not read the books, that might have made it a little more complicated, and this kept the story cleaner and moving faster. So maybe the screenwriters, they have their job for a reason. They probably know what they're doing, and I was supposed to call him Gary Lawrence, since you're not Francis Lawrence, I think probably has a plan. And Darius, I like Darius a lot. It really is too bad, but maybe there'll be a character who's sort of a composite of Darius who shows up later in some form, just a general peacekeeper. So I'm still holding out hope for that.